أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده أما بعد Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Dear brothers and sisters in Islam, we welcome you to this international virtual Dawah training course. We had some courses in the past and there was a gap, so welcome again for a new course, and this course is on an introduction to world religion. This course is organized by International Institute of Islamic Learning in collaboration with Center for Peace and Global Studies. So we welcome you on behalf of both these organizations. We start the program with the recitation from the Holy Quran, and I would like to request Dr. Hafiz Ahmad Hamad to please recite few verses from the Holy Quran to start this program. Hafiz Ahmad Hamad. Please, Ahmad Hamad, unmute yourself.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله. Please.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل يا أهل الكتاب تعالوا إلى كلمة سواء بيننا وبينكم ألا نعبد إلا الله ولا نشرك به شيئا ولا يتخذ بعضنا بعضا أربابا من دون الله فإن تولوا فقولوا اشهدوا بأننا مسلمون. يا أهل الكتاب لم تحاجون في إبراهيم وما أنزلت التوراة والإنجيل إلا من بعده أفلا تعقلون. ها أنتم هؤلاء حاججتم فيما لكم به علم فلم تحاجون فيما ليس لكم به علم والله يعلم وأنتم لا تعلمون. ما كان إبراهيم يهوديا ولا نصرانيا ولكن كان حنيفا مسلما وما كان من المشركين. صدق الله العظيم.
Sadaqallahu al-Azim. Jazakallahu khairan, Dr. Hafiz Ahmad Hamad from International Islamic University for reciting verses from the Holy Quran. First of all, I would like to thank all our participants of this program that you have shown your interest and you have joined this program today. A big number of people are joining this program, and we already have more than 180 participants here. The program is also broadcast live on our Facebook page of Center for Peace and Global Studies. So many participants are attending there, and a big number will be watching it later on YouTube. So inshallah, it will be a very good learning experience and program for us. All of us, we will be learning from each other. So I'm thankful to all my friends. We were able to invite this big number of participants. This was because of our involvement with institute like SMI in Lahore, like International Islamic University in Islamabad, like Dawa Academy, like Center for Peace and Global Studies, like Discovers Islam Society of Bahrain, Hidayah Center Foundation of Malaysia, RDC of Malaysia, so and Rifa International University. So I'm thankful to all these institutions, all our colleagues, and thankful to Center for Peace and Global Studies and the International Institute of Islamic Learning to providing us this opportunity. And we are here again to start our international program. I am thankful to, I should express my special thanks to all the scholars who have accepted our invitation, our request, and they will be here to share their knowledge about different religions. So it will be a learning experience. We organizers, we teachers, the students, we all will be learning from each other, inshallah. Our today's session is about what is a religion, and our resource person is already here. But before that, I would like to request Dr. Muhammad Shahid Rafi, who is Secretary General of Center for Peace and Global Studies, our partner organization in holding this program. I would like to request him to kindly unmute yourself, sir, and say a few welcoming remarks. Dr. Shahid Rafi, sir.
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulihin Nabiyyil Kareem, amma ba'd, fa'auzu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alif Lam Mim, zalikal kitabu la rayba fi, hudal lil muttaqeen, sadaqallahul azim. This is the only perfect book containing nothing doubtful, harmful, or destructive. There is no false charge in it. It is a guidance for those who guard against it. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Though Dr. Hassan Malik has already welcomed all of you, but being Secretary General of the Center for Peace and Global Studies, I welcome you all again in this international virtual training course, which is being conducted by International Institute of Islamic Learning and the Center for Peace and Global Studies. The theme behind this course is to introduce different religions to the academia and the thoughtful personalities of the world. Some of us might know not about several religions. Even the names of some religions may be unfamiliar for us. By knowing religions, we can understand others' way of thinking and the way they look, act, and react on the actions of the people of different societies, religions, and cultures. I hope this type of thinking will help us create peace and harmony among various countries and societies, and no nation or culture will be considered and treated inferior or superior. As the Quran says in Surah Al-Hujurat, Surah number 49, Ayah 13, Ya ayyuhan nas inna khalaqnakum min zakarin wa unsa وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله يتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. O mankind, indeed, we have created you from male and female and made you peoples and tribes that you may know one another. Indeed, the most noble of you in the sight of God is the most righteous of you. Indeed, God is knowing and acquainted. I pray for the success of this course and hope that you all will be keeping interest in all of its lectures of this course and participate and contribute in the future activities of IIIL and the CPGS. We are very fortunate that Dr. Anis Ahmad, uh, who is going to deliver first lecture of this course, is with us. He has a vast experience of teaching comparative religion. So he is the most suitable person to discuss the topic with the learned participants of this course. And Dr. Anis Ahmad has a vast experience of Dawah work in different countries like America, Malaysia, Pakistan. He is nowadays heading the very famous and international university, the Rifa International University, Islamabad, Pakistan, as Vice Chancellor. He was the founder, Director General of the Dawah Academy. He has run the International Islamic University, Islamabad. So it is a very good opportunity for us to begin our this course with his lecture. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Salam. Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, for introducing Center for Peace and Global Studies and Professor Anis. I forgot to introduce myself. I am your brother in Islam, Ahsan Malik. I teach at the Department of Politics and International Relations of International Islamic University, Islamabad. My family is involved with teaching and running educational institution for several decades. So I am thankful to our friends, our colleagues, our family that they have provided us this platform of International Institute of Islamic Learning, where we can interact with each other and learn from each other. So and this is also to show you that not only people of religious studies or madaris, they are da'i or they should be concerned about dawah and other religions. So we all are here to learn from each other. Yes, Professor Dr. Anis Ahmad, floor is yours, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalam ala khatamil anbiya. I'm thankful to the Institute for inviting me. I will try to confine myself to the subject and allow some time, inshallah, for question answers. When we talk about religion, we must keep in mind that there is hardly a human society where we cannot find religion in one form or the other. Nevertheless, with all its forms and varieties, there are certain aspects which are common in religions, and that leads us to summarize what is the meaning of religion. Meaning of religion has been approached from two different angles. First, essentially, a historical approach where people try to find out how religion began in different parts of the world, how people started worshipping a deity, whichever name they may have given it. And then they try to trace history of development of that religion. This is what we call normally the science of religion or the study of religion. The second approach is that when we try to find out what are the major themes and concepts and try to analyze and interpret meaning of those symbols or those signs or those languages which are used. And that is a matter of comparative religion. Right now, we are trying to first understand how religion is understood by the West or the East. And this does not mean I'm endorsing any of those ideas. I'm just trying to share with you how various scholars and people have understood religion as a phenomena, as a faith of people, as a practice of people. The term originally is traced from Latin, which means to bind or fasten. In the East and the West, there are various approaches to religion. And I just refer to a few of the scholars. For example, German philosopher Schleiermacher thinks that religion originates in a feeling of dependence. When you depend on someone, when you are trying to seek help from someone, then you are developing a religious approach. Some other thinkers, like Iliade, they think the religion begins in a mythological phenomena where stories are created, where people come up with some imaginative aspects like the conventional understanding of Hinduism in terms of Mahabharata and many other such uh, wars which were done between their gods and goddesses. Then some other think that religion essentially started in the form of magic or some powers which were to be used for benefit of people. But that magic ultimately developed into religious thinking. So we find anthropologists talking about it and philosophers supporting that. We also find some Western writers who think that religion essentially is a matter of holiness. And we'll come to it in a while more detail. And something is a matter of ultimate concern of people. Looking from a historical viewpoint, first and foremost, I mentioned about Schleiermacher. He thinks that religious impulse springs from a longing for truth, for peace, and good life after death. And therefore, this longing and dependence is what is mean of religion. And ultimately, a person who is looking for relief or peace or comfort wants to unite himself or become in a union with the ultimate God, whatever name he may give it. Saint Augustine subscribed to nearly same aspect when he thinks that it is trying to find the lost situation in which human beings were. We also find that there are others who think that religious truth cannot be proven by any experience, by an empirical reality, but it's only a matter of how we feel towards certain things. So these feelings and these attachments lead people to religion, and they start believing in certain things with certainty. Whatever they try to believe becomes their ultimate truth. Some others think that religion essentially is a matter of certain rituals and ceremonies, and these ceremonies and uh, offerings constitute the main bulk of religion. For some others, it's a matter of how inner self of the people gets enlightened. It is religion that enlightens the inner self. Having said that, let's try to understand what religion essentially is. Religion essentially stands for a total way of life. Every single aspect, whether a person is an artist, a person is an artisan, a person is an architect, whatever the person may be, it is religion that ultimately impinges which influences, which impacts on whatever activity the person is doing. If you look into Muslim art, for example, or Gothic art, for example, or Christian art in Rome and elsewhere, you find that whoever was the artist, whoever was the architect, could not separate his mind, his ideas from his work. If the Muslim artist believed in Tawheed, then everything which he structured, may that be calligraphy, may that be a matter of a mosque, a palace, a castle, a minaret, a dome, whatever, all that artifacts, all that which represents what he thinks is essentially based on belief or religion. Therefore, for our purposes, we can say that religion means that which unifies human life, which provides meaning, and which becomes the main motivational force for all human actions. This understanding of religion, which I am sharing with you, is unfortunately not shared by many communities of the world. Western societies particularly, and some Eastern societies, have developed a concept that religion has its own domain, while secular life has its own domain. Therefore, they think when they are in church, they must have certain attitude of mind and soul. But when they are back in marketplace, in parliament, in their profession, then it's only pure professionalism which they should try to follow. And religion has nothing to do with that. You listen quite often that political life requires political principles and political maneuvering, and religion should not be mixed with politics. This is a dominant trend which has been created as a result of the post-Catholicism or post-Christian approach in 17th century, when people thought that church authority is not to be followed, but they should develop their own independent existence. And the movement of uh, separation from church started. It was not just church, but in general terms, it was separation from religion. And consequently, two domains were identified, one for the religion and one for political and economic activities. When we look from our Islamic perspective, then we find that the Quran and Sunnah have very clearly elaborated on these aspects. But before I come to that, let's look how Muslims themselves understand about Islam. The popular perception among Muslims is that perhaps if they are making salat, if they're making Hajj and Umrah, if they are carrying a tasbih in their hand and counting names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then they are doing something religious, and these are religious people symbolized by these activities. A second approach also exists, which says you may not carry a tasbih, you may not have an appearance which is conventionally Muslim, but if your heart and soul is remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you are a religious person because you have a spirituality. So spirituality or some kind of inner feeling takes place, and many Muslims regard that doesn't matter what appears, but it's only a matter of heart. A third approach also exists where we find people assuming that if certain Islamic punishments are implemented somewhere, then this is Islam. And that has developed into a global phenomena known as Islamophobia. In the name of Islamophobia, we find condemnation of not only certain acts, but Islam as such. Orientalism, Western authors, even some Muslims who are confused about what Islam is, they think that Islam creates a situation where Sharia law means punishments, and that is total misconception. A fourth approach also exists, which says that uh, religion is a method between you as individual and your God. And therefore, you don't have to worry about what's around you. Just purify yourself, keep your matters very ethical and honest, and Allah will reward you. Don't worry about what's happening in the world. Now, all these concepts exist in the minds of Muslims, as well as I said earlier, in the minds of philosophers of East and the West, who think that religion is a matter of holiness, and holiness means there are certain areas which are holy. Therefore, when you are entering a sacred place, then take off your shoes. But when you are entering a secular place, walk the way you want. And similarly, when you are doing some sacred acts, then achieve not only physical, but also try to achieve spiritual purity. But when you are dealing with the economic matters, political matters, you don't have to think about all those preparations. So in both situations, whether the global scenario or Muslims as such, these misconceptions exist. Let's try to find out very briefly, with the help of the Quran, how Islam looks on the concept of religion. First and foremost, the word religion, which is translated into Arabic as mazhab, and same in Persian, and same in Urdu, the word mazhab or religion does not exist in the Quran or Sunnah. Nowhere the Quran talks about mazhab or religion, but talks about deen. This term deen has been used around 85 times in the Quran, different places, in different meaning. And when we look into all these meaning, then we drive the real essence of what Islam is. For example, every Muslim who makes prayer 5 times a day keeps on repeating in Surah Al-Fatiha, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are the most kind, the most merciful, the most blessed, the most great, but at the same time, you are also owner of the day of judgment. Malik Yawmuddin. Here, the word deen has been used in terms of the day of judgment. But at the same time, we find the Quran also telling us that you have to fulfill your social responsibilities. So the Quran tells us, haven't you seen the person who denies his religion? By what? By refusing to feed the hungry and by trying to repel. Therefore, here the term deen refers to that obligation which is towards society, towards human beings. If someone is making long prayers and he is still not trying to help the needy, not trying to the orphan and destitute to be supported, then he is denying his deen. Then we find that the Quran also talks about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's supremacy. And for that it tells us that you should establish Allah's sovereignty. So the Quran says you should establish hakimiyya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In hukm lillah. Hukum authority is only for Allah. ذَلِكَ دِينُ الْقَيِّمِ. which means that here the term deen refers to not only Allah's supremacy, but His supremacy to be established, His supremacy to be realized. And that means realization of peace and justice in society. Islam does not assume that political change, social change, economic change is secularity. No. Islam assumes that if we want to establish Allah's supremacy, then He should not be supreme only in mosque or in church or in a place of worship. But His supremacy must be reflected in my political matters, economic matters, social matters. So here we find the Quran telling us. And then similarly, the same Quran continues and tells us that when you are facing situations like exploitation, oppression, injustice, then you have to make sure that fitna and fasad, lawlessness and destruction in society has to be stopped. And for that removal of fitna, you keep on struggling, striving and fighting till fitna and fasad is fully eliminated and law and order or deen is only for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then we find the Quran further telling us that not only that, but you have to make sure that people who are worshipping in their own places, may those be Christians, Hindus, Jews, Zoroastrians, any faith, you have to make sure that they have full liberty to go to their place of worship. And if they are denied, then you should stand up, you should support them, you should help them in getting their human right to go to their place of worship. This is deen. In other words, the Quran defines deen by not confining it to ritual and ceremonies, nor it wants deen to be confined to just certain offerings and rituals, but in its holistic, complete meaning. Now let's try to understand how religion is approached in East and West when we want to talk about its development and its features, characteristics. If we look from an anthropological viewpoint, then we are told that religion essentially is a matter of relating oneself to something which is unusual, uncommon, numinous, or fascinating. Therefore, for many people, religion originates in that kind of fascination which we find in some of the tribal religions and in some of the developed religions. They think that whatever takes place in human life, it's a very clear sky, but suddenly you have clouds and dark clouds, and then you have uh, electrification all over these clouds, and you hear thunders. Ultimately, you feel afraid, fascinated, and you start thinking, what is this? And to save you from this lightning and thunder, you try to use certain language and certain postures that anthropologists think is the beginning of religion. It begins in that experience of fascination, that feeling of wonder and surprise. Some others think that it's a matter of theology. Human mind thinks about from where human beings came, who made this universe. And addressing those questions, they come up with certain answers. Those answers are of theological nature. They tell us about creation of a God And sometimes some religions assume not one but many gods. So this theological approach also answers their questions. Then some think that it's a matter of assuming that everything in universe, like human beings, has a soul or anima. This soul is shared by individuals with the global soul. And this global soul, because of its strength and power and greatness, deserves some kind of reverence and respect. Therefore, one should bow down to that soul. This concept of soul or carrying that power or some kind of holiness even transpired in various cultures where kings were assumed to carry that power. Till 1945 in Japan, king was considered son of uh, cosmic sun, a child of sun. And therefore, since sun shines and ruler is its son, therefore needs to be bowed down. And same existed in ancient religions in Egypt, in Babylonia, in Persia, where they thought that king carries that soul, that power which changes life of people. To the extent that in most modern world, we find that in the English tradition, king or queen is not supposed to walk on floor, but walk on red carpet. Because if they walk on floor, then the whole floor becomes holy because of their charisma. And no common man can walk on that floor. Therefore, a red carpet is spread or gloves are worn so you don't touch the body. To the extent that in some tribal religions, if a person eats from the leftover of the king or the uh, person who is holy in their society, then they feel they have done something wrong, and sometimes out of shock, people die. All these concepts, when looked from anthropological viewpoint, are summarized in simply one word: that religion began in soul or a global soul, or as the Hindu faith assumes, Atman, the soul of the whole universe. Looking on these few examples, we can very easily assume and understand that human mind, when it thinks about something infinite, something which is not measurable, beyond our reach, quite often takes help from his human imagination and thinks about divinity in terms of human terms. We think whoever is divine is like us, having hands and eyes and ears and walks and feels tired. Therefore, the concept of divine being in some of the revealed religions is that God for them worked for 6 days of the week and then he took rest on seventh day. Now, all these concepts, when we analyze them from an objective viewpoint, suffer from a shortcoming. They often reduce the whole phenomena of divinity to either some manifestations or to some abstractions. They forget that whoever is the creator essentially has to be transcendent, most powerful, living, and most compassionate. That means All these basic attributes have to be in one single being, not an individual, but in a being. Otherwise, we try to reduce divinity to its manifestations. It is just like instead of going and watching an elephant, we assume what an elephant means and we close our eyes. After closing our eyes, we touch the tail of elephant without seeing the elephant and assume elephant is like a rope. Or we touch his legs and assume elephant is like a pillar. Or touch his body and think elephant is like a rock. But if we just open our eyes and see the whole phenomena, we discover our concept of elephant as rope, as pillar, as rock was our own imagination. Same has been done with the understanding of religion, and therefore some aspects which are definitely part of attributes of whatever you call divinity, those aspects have been taken in partiality and they have been assumed as symbol or part of divinity. When we look on the issue from an Islamic perspective, then you find it tries to approach the issue from a holistic viewpoint. And that means Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be confined to one single aspect. The Quran tells us He is all hearing, He is all seeing, He is all present, He is all powerful, and He is all compassion. Which means His power does not make Him a tyrant, which means His love and compassion does not make Him disregard even injustice. If injustice is done, then it must be noticed. It must be corrected with all compassion. Therefore, most of approaches to religion are short of a holistic approach. They are more particularistic. They confine religious phenomena to a particular phenomena. The concept that I discussed a while ago of the global soul, which has led some religions of the world assume that monkeys, reptiles, snakes, cow, trees, mountains, everything has soul and therefore all deserve to be worshipped. So you have even in such religions statues of gods and goddesses, and even their sexual parts are worshipped because these are symbols and signs of divinity. There are other faiths where you find that people assume that whatever is ultimate God has no existence at all. It is you himself who is supposed to be your own Buddha. You don't need anything from outside, but you discover in yourself what is truth and so on and so forth. In both situations, we are confining divinity to either some symbols and signs or to some feelings. Islamic approach to religion is, first and foremost, it is not ritual and ceremonies or mazhab, but deen. And deen means a holistic approach where one's devotions, worship, one's economy, one's political life, one's family life, one's social dealings, everything is to be guided by the principles and directions which are given to human beings through selected persons by this divine being, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that's how the Islamic approach becomes very, very logical and scientific, that the creator himself, being concerned about his creation, did not want to leave them uninformed, unguided. And for that, he sent messengers, not one, but several hundreds. And those messengers in different times came up with divine revelation, guidance, not only guidance, but they applied that in their own life and lived a family life to indicate how you are supposed to be with your family, how you're supposed to be in economic matters, how you're supposed to be in political matters. The Quran tells us Sayyidina Dawud and Sulaiman were rulers, and Islam in its modern form also tells us that Prophet, peace be upon him, was not just quote unquote a priest, but he was prophet. At the same time, he was the political authority in Medina, and he had also the legal authority by judging matters brought to him. In other words, he was a total human personality where all aspects of religion or deen were fully identified. So when we look into understanding that is given by Quran particularly, then deen is a holistic approach, total way of life. It's not a matter of theology alone. It's not a matter of worship alone. It's not a matter of few concepts alone, but totally human life is to be observed in line with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has provided by way of guidance. To summarize, the Western and Eastern concepts of religion indicate certain shortcoming, and their shortcoming is their particularization. They became particular. They are confined to certain areas. Some religions are landlocked. Some are based on ethnicity. Only people from a certain blood or gene could claim to be followers of that religion. Or people who were born in certain geographic territory can call themselves from that religion. Islam, on the other hand, has looked into religious phenomena from a holistic viewpoint, and therefore it provides a comprehensive view. It provides human beings with solutions which are not time-bound. Therefore, Islam is not a matter of a faith for 7th century, but it's universal faith. It's not just a matter of certain principles. It's a matter of their manifestation in Sunnah. And Sunnah again has been made universal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Prophet did all those things which are not bound by territory, by a people. Whatever life he lived was for the whole of humanity. If he shows by his example that one should wash hands before eating, then it simply means whether you are in Asia, in Europe, in Africa, Australia, anywhere. Common sense requires that you should touch food in a hygienic state. Can we say that since Prophet said, wash your hands before eating, it was meant for 7th century? If the Prophet, peace be upon him, says that when you see your brother, you should smile, and that smiling is a sadaqah, then can we say that this smiling was limited to 7th century and only for Arabs and for Turks and not for others? In other words, not only the Quranic guidance, but prophetic sunnah is universal. It has universal applicability. In that sense, a complete model of teachings and their implementation exists with Islam alone. No other faith, to my knowledge, has ever made a claim that whatever books they have are in the original form. Open any of the scriptures which are printed and available in libraries, and they tell us this is the so and so edition, this is the book of so and so who wrote, and then that book again during different periods has been revised and updated, while the Quran and Prophetic Sunnah are two sources which have remained intact, not changed, modified, or revised, because these are universal principles, these are universally applicable. So Islamic approach to religion is not that of mazhab as the Arabic term stands, but for deen, and deen means total way of life and providing guidance to total human being, not just to a person who wants to worship very religiously, but who wants to exploit people politically, not for a person who wants to visit his place of worship every weekend, but when he is sitting in parliament or in a law court or in a market, then he has no concern for what he did on weekend. Therefore, with universality, comprehensiveness, practicality, I can say with all confidence that when we define Islam as complete, total way of life, then it is a unique faith which cannot be compared with many other approaches which have been developed or which exist in the world and followed by millions of people. The Islamic approach provides uh, a room for thought, invites people globally to consider and make a comparative study, and then try to find out for themselves what is good for their soul, for their society, for their family, for their country. I think I should stop here and welcome any questions you have. I have given plenty of time for that purpose.
Thank you very much, Prof. Now the floor is open for question answer. We invite you, if you have any question, please raise your hand and we will ask you to unmute. Yes, Muhammad Arsalan, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Assalamu alaikum, sir.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Sir, my question is that while studying as a Muslim, what should be the purpose kept in mind while studying the approaches and the world views toward the religion?
Very good question. You know, the Quran again and again asks you to use your reason, have tafakkur, have taqul, have tafaqquh, have analysis. For what? To distinguish what is right and wrong. The Quran itself invites us for developing an objective and comparative approach. Therefore, on every page you find a reference to Bani Israel, a reference to earlier people, a reference to the people of Ad and Samud and Hud and so on and so forth. Why the Quran talks about it? Because it wants us to explore and understand what were the causes for these people to get punished, have declined, and not continue with their civilizational journey. All these civilizations were at one time at the top of their achievements. Can we bring any example from modern world comparable with, for example, what were done in the form of the pyramids in Egypt when you had no such technology as you have today? These miraculous things have been done by people, and that shows their engineering skill, their knowledge of things. But with all that knowledge, they could not sustain and got destructed. So comparative study strengthens your faith, tells you more clearly how universal, how true, how applicable Islam is. But while you are doing that, you have to de-link your mind from the Eurocentric approach, which I have been for last over a decade talking on various occasions, that you have to decolonize your mind. When you use a word in comparative religion, for example, the word holy used by Rodolph Otto and many others. And when you hear a holy person who is sitting in a Muslim shrine, the word holy has a culture, has a meaning in Europe and a different meaning elsewhere. When you make comparative study, then do not get confused by just terms, but try to find out their context, their meaning, and then you will realize how different Islam is. There is no world religion where you do not have a concept of deity. Christianity, for example, Christianity says we believe in one God. But when we ask, what do you mean by one God? Is he just by himself, or is known by his son? Is son by himself or known by his father? Then you find the difference. So comparative study helps you in realizing how beautiful your own faith is, Islam particularly, and for others, it is also an invitation to find out, is truth only in their faith, or it can be elsewhere and in a better form. Next, please.
Yes, Sheikh Najjar from South Africa, please unmute yourself.
Yes, brother.
Are we there? Right.
Yes, brother. Please.
Assalamu alaikum, Doctor, and assalamu alaikum
Wa
to
alaikum assalam wa
everyone.
rahmatullah wa barakatuh.
Doctor, I first want to compliment you. Really, it is very much informative, and especially when you do your summary. Now, if we look, coming from South Africa, and you know, we got different types of religion
I
here.
know, I know.
Yeah. And if I look to the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks, Inna hadha al-Quran yahdi lillati hiya aqwam. This Quran directs and guides to what is the best. So we have that aqidah, that belief we have the best. Now, where do we find a problem? We find a problem, for an example, if I look to the Islamic countries, like you have mentioned also, then we find that we have that understanding we are the best, but however, yes, we recognize there are people, they deserve and they must be earned their respect. But can we allow their da'wah to be and propagate their way, which we know it is wrong, within Islamic concepts, within Islamic countries, for an example?
Jazakallah khair.
Yeah.
I will try to respond at two different levels. Firstly, the Quran says, Lakum dinukum waliyadin. The Quran says, Deen in the eyes of Allah is only Islam. The Quran says, Deen has been made complete. And this complete Deen is known and given the name Islam, which means that Islam by itself is complete and universal, and that is something established. Now, if there is a state that claims to be Islamic state, then it should follow what the Prophet, peace be upon him, did. in Medina Munawwara, he did not expel Jews unless they themselves provided justification. Jewish community has lived in every single part of Muslim dynasties. I'm saying dynasties. I'm not saying Khilafah, dynasties. And they observed, preached their faith by writing tafsir of Torah in Arabic in their own languages. Moses' Maimonides wrote tafsir of Torah in Arabic, not in Hebrew. So the Muslims have never been intolerant in that respect because they find an evidence from the Quran that they can live side by side and they can observe their faith. Now, coming to the first part of your question, where you said that Muslims are themselves very much different, I will give you examples from South Africa itself. Tell me, in the period of apartheid, what was the concept of the native about even Muslims? Did they regard them at the same level? What does Islam want? Islam wanted those Muslims who were there not to live in those prisons they made for themselves with iron bars and separate communities, but with dawah. They should have gone to them, learned their language, lived with them. I have seen with my own eyes one big shade with hundreds of people and only one water tap. And the other end, swimming pools. Now, that means it's not aqidah. It is practice of Islam, which is dawah. We cannot preach Islam by beautiful lectures. No, never. We can only communicate Islam by our behavior. And I gave you an example from your own territory, how for quite some time we did not do dawah, but the opposite. We create distance between them by all those iron bars which were there to protect people. So Islam removes iron bars. It says all human beings are ayal of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They are his family. The Muslims are supposed to help anyone in need, not only the orphans and needy who are Muslims, but even those who are not Muslims. Therefore, dawah to me is not a matter of lectures, but it is practically. At the same time, in same place which you are mentioning, where I mentioned, I have seen with my own eyes, people provided hot meal, hot soup, free of charges. I know the whole society there. So you have people of all kind. That is dawah. When you are giving this soup or this hot meal to a Muslim and non-Muslim, that is dawah, not by sermon given in the masjid. Next question, please.
Yes, please, Shahab Ahmad, please unmute yourself.
Assalamu alaikum, sir. How are you? Can you
Walaikum
hear me?
salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Sir, my question is that we know the nature, the approach of Islam is Dinic approach, not Mazhabic approach. But how the Christianity and the approaches of the other religion became dominated on the Dinic nature of Islam?
Brother, very simple answer. When Muslims were observing their faith and based on their faith, they were developing scientific equipment. They were using all those gadgets which are needed for global trade. Their ships were traveling from one corner to the other. Their observatories in Samarkand and elsewhere were coming up with findings. Then they were ruling the world. And even after that, their knowledge continued ruling the world. But when the European colonialism with preachers came down to Africa, to Asia, to Australia, to many parts of the world, then they colonized those places for economic purposes. And since they were more advanced in technology, and Muslims were even debating at that time, should we allow modern guns to be used or old guns to be used? Because they lost sense of direction. Therefore, with colonization, they were able to create a global supremacy of capitalism. It was not Christianity. It's wrong to say Christianity spread. No, Christianity has shrunk continuously. And even today, it is shrunk. Compare the population which is of other faith. Say, for example, the largest population is that of Chinese today. And you find they have majority of those who still believe in Confucius, in Lao Tzu, in some other older animistic faith, but not in Christianity, very small number. So Christianity has not dominated. It is capitalism with the imperialistic powers which has dominated and which has worked and which is still working in the name of so-called globalization. So we cannot say that because of Christianity, they were able to establish themselves. They did bring with them every troop was accompanied by a priest to convert people. When they came to Asia, went to Africa, Bishop Tito of South Africa has very well said that the white Christians came to our land and asked us to hold Bible in our hands and close our eyes and pray. And we prayed. When we opened our eyes, Bible was in our hand, our land was in their hand. That's what Bishop Tito has said. So the capitalist came to capture resources and land. Even today, it's not Christianity.
Yes, next question. Please unmute yourself, Sister Tahreem Gul.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
First of all, I would say Jazakallah khairan kaseera for your precious time and this platform that you have provided us so that we can learn, about the religions and whatever you have to offer about the concept. So my question is that you have told us about the Western developed concept about the religion, but you told us that the religion and secular life, they think that this does not have to do anything, whatever they do in their lives. So does that mean, sir, because we learned that Bible and Torah all have the sense of judgment, and they have told us about the day of judgments concept, but does that mean that they don't think their actions outside of church do not have any consequences, or just they have overlooked and ignored the concept of day of judgment in any aspect?
Yeah, thank you very much. You find that in various parts of the world, there have been people who have been devout Christians, but at the same time, when they come out of church, they are no more acting with the teachings of Sayyidina Isa. Quite often, a president of a big country will go to church. When he will come out of church, he will order for destruction of countries on fake news. And that has taken place in our recent history. Therefore, it's not a matter of carrying a book. The Quran tells us again and again, "O people of the book, you have your own book. Haven't you read in that you should not do these things while you are doing it?" Therefore, carrying Torah or carrying Bible does not make difference, just as there can be some Muslims who carry Quran in their home or in their pocket, but They might be rude, they might be unjust, they might be unfair, they might even tell lies. Does it mean that carrying a book in their pocket makes them? No, it's reading the book, understanding the book, applying the book. I am sure there may be many good Christians, many good Jews who till today observe their religious teachings, which are no different in essence than Islam. Islam is not a matter of just the Quran, but we as Muslims believe in whatever was revealed originally in Torah, in Evangelists, in all other books that came. But none of those could be kept intact by their own followers. And that's not what I'm saying. That's what you find those books. Their prefaces tell you very clearly how they were collected, and not just in a few decades, but even in centuries. It took centuries for them to collect together. You know that after the passing of Buddha, it was the first manuscript in Pali was developed after 400 years of his death, first manuscript. And for 400 years, we have no idea what happened. And same applies to Vedas and Upanishads and Gita and whatnot, and many others. So carrying a book does not make a person always. I can carry a book of physics, can make me a physicist by that. I can become a physical scientist by that. So that's why the Quran again and again reminds Muslims and others that you should follow those pure teachings which were sent, and presently, it is we who are responsible to communicate this message to our fellow human beings, that you compare, read your own text, take a copy of Quran from us, compare it, and find out where you have better solution for human problems. Next, please.
Yes, Muhammad Zishan, please unmute yourself.
Yes, doctor, thank you. And my question is that, what is the difference between tribal religion and developed religion? Just because of that, you are giving us one example, and the follower of that example is also I mean to say that they are maybe from the developed religion as well. So what is the main difference between tribal religion and developed religion?
Jazakallah. If you remember, I said a while ago, you have to decolonize your mind. The word tribal religions, developed religions, advanced religions, backward religions, underdeveloped religions, all these are the classifications of the imperialist who went to various parts of the world, observed what people were doing, and categorized them. Go to any library and try to find out. You will find dozens of books by anthropology sociologists which are entitled The Black Soul, Heathens, Primitive Culture, and so on and so forth. All these terms have been used so often and with so high frequency that hardly a person today who speaks English will be unaffected by that. What I shared with you in the beginning was not what I think, but what you find in every single book that relates with world religions. That some religions are tribal, some are developed. Tribal means religion of Topeka tribe. Tribal means religion of X tribe in Australia or in Africa or in Central Asia or somewhere else. And then what it means is that within the tribe, there is a holy person. It may be medicine man, if it is African. It may be a spiritualist in Central Asian or somewhere. But there is such a person who has some divine or holy power. And this person is to be respected. This person is to be heard and followed. Whenever you have a problem, you go to the person. So this becomes the tribal practice of that religion. It may have similarity, maybe dissimilar, makes no difference. Now, although what is discovered in tribal religions is no different than what you find in some so-called developed religions. Christianity claims itself as a developed religion because they assume they have a mission to Christianize the world. That's why with the capitalism, Christianity also was introduced wherever the imperial powers, European powers went to colonize people. Uh, the, the, uh, the point that needs to be understood is that when we use these terms, these are common terms by people who are writing on religion from the West. We have to use different language and different terms. Quran does not call any people primitive or advanced. It only calls people who are guided human beings and unguided human beings. Those who are guided are because of divine guidance. Those who reject the guidance are unguided. It does not categorize them based on color, as black religions is the common term, or based on gene, the Jewish concept of ethnocentrism, that only the Jewish seed makes you a Jew, and so on and so forth. All these aspects have been uh, uh, condemned by Islam for its universal approach, that all human beings are to be approached. So when I use these two terms, I was just introducing you to the concept which has been claimed to be scientific study, comparative study by Western and Eastern writers. Is that clear, sir?
We go for the next question. I will take from question from the sisters. So please, Sayyidun Nisa Sayyid, please unmute yourself.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. I would like to just very frankly say, what we need to do is to contextualize Islam wherever we live. And Dr. Anis Ahmad, who ran a 1-month training program in South Africa where I participated, but that was during apartheid South Africa. There was a lot of challenges that we minority Muslims had to face. But today in a democracy, we have the opportunity to live side by side with all faith communities and look at how best we, and I'm calling myself we as Muslims, can project ourselves using Holy Quran and the Sunnah to impart deen. And I really appreciate we non-dawa workers, but we are da'is in our own right, projecting Islam to the best of our ability. So a great cause, and I think we need to respect other religions. And we in South Africa managed to do this, and we're moving headways. So during the course of many other lectures or interactions of this nature, we all will get an insight of how do we apply this in our everyday life. Thank you very much.
Jazakallah, sister. I fully agree with you. And I want to assure you that I have visited South Africa, not only apartheid, but even after that. And I value very much the environment Muslims have been able to maintain there. And I again repeat that it's not a matter of lectures or sermons, but it's a matter of our actions, which are dawah to others. And I fully agree with you that we respect every faith. Does not mean that all faith are same, does not mean there are no differences. With differences, there can be a respectful, honorable attitude towards human beings. Next, please.
Yes, Huzaifa Yunus, please unmute yourself.
Assalamualaikum, sir.
Walaikum
Sir,
salam wa rahmatullah.
regarding the first question, you answered that the Quran and Islam allows us to use intellect and analyze the world. So, what is wrong with the Eurocentric thinking? Basically, they started from traditional thinking, then scientific analysis, and then they have reached postmodernism. So, what is the basic problem with Eurocentric thinking? Thank you.
Thank you very much. When we use Eurocentrism, it means that history and modern uh, uh, development of human beings, societies, all is centered in what is delivered or given by Europe. Therefore, if you want to set your watch, then you have to set your watch according to Greenwich time. If you want to call yourself South African or Central Asian, South of what? Central of what? Paris and London. If you want to use a textbook, then which textbook? Published by Oxford University Press, Cambridge, or McGraw-Hill, or by Harper and Row, and so on and so forth. That book gives you knowledge. Others are secondary. Eurocentrism means when everything is linked with one single place. If you want to have your economic activity, then your money should go to either London or New York, and from there should be diverted to where you want to have your business. Nothing has to go without touching that sacred soil in everything. If you want to wear a dress, then it must be a Levi's. If you want to wear a jogger, it must be X-made. And then you are a modern person. That is Eurocentrism, when you start your standards, your living, your right and wrong is based on what is decided. If you have the so-called global your MDGs, millennium goals, then these millennium goals are to be determined by X, Y, and then the whole world must follow, or else you are backward. So this is the problem of Eurocentrism, and this simply means that one single culture, one single thought, which originates in a geographic territory, must dominate all over the world. This is meaning of Eurocentrism. And this is what you find today in the name of United Nations or any other bodies, or UNESCO or whatnot. You find a certain understanding imposed. We never did it as a Muslim civilization. It was a choice to people to adapt it, accept it, or reject it. Islam provided people with this whole liberty. And today, your media, social media, your digital media, everything is infected by Eurocentrism.
Yes, please, we take from a sister. Dr. Azka, please unmute yourself and ask your question. We may take one more question. We don't have much time.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Anis, for comprehensive and brief lecture. My question is related to atheism. As in coordinating all your lecture, the human beings in olden era, they conclude to the religion and concepts of the religion. And when we think now, the people are thinking and their wisdom is reaching towards the atheism. So is it related to rationalism or evaluation or something else?
Thank you very much. The rise of atheism is essentially a matter of getting frustrated with the so-called formal religion. Formal religion in Christianity or any other faith is confined to certain rituals and ceremonies. if a child is born in a family where he is compelled to memorize the Quran, compelled by force to make prayer, and never told what's the benefit of the Quran, never told what's the meaning of the Quran, never told what prayer does to his personal life and social life and economic life. If nothing of that sort is done, and then this person finds out there are people who do not believe in God, but they are better surgeons, better mathematicians, better organizers, then what should this person think? I think we have to find out reasons for atheism, not just its condemnation. A lot is due to uh, illogical and rational approaches taken by Muslims themselves within their own families and society. They leave their youth from childhood to become a replica of the cartoon characters, of the literary characters. They read horror, they see horror movies and read books based on which those movies are made. And consequently, they live in a different world and they become very easy victims of atheism. So I will put most of the blame on parents, education system, and Muslim societies. It is their job to make sure that their children fully understand what is the benefit and blessing that they get if they understand the Quran and understand the lifestyle of the Prophet, peace be upon him, not just history, but lifestyle, how he lived. Then they can always be protected, always be guided, and there will be no chances for them to get into atheism. Atheism is not just a matter of rational approach, it's a matter of skeptic and agnostic approach. An atheist becomes essentially an agnostic, one who denies ultimately any presence of knowledge and truth. That's what takes the person to atheism.
Last question from Brother Labi Burnett from Malawi, please. Please unmute yourself. Yes, please.
Yeah, I cannot hear you.
Brother, you need to unmute yourself. We move to Brother Abdurrahman. Please ask your question. This is last question.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Thank you very much, sir, for giving us this such an interactive chance to ask questions. My question is that in modern academia, even if it relates to comparative religion or religious studies, it is encouraged to indulge in the kind of researches and studies that are very much descriptive and theoretical, rather than those we see in before times, like theological discussion and discourses. So my question is that how this modern approach of studying religion would be helpful in I'la Kalimatullah, in Dawah studies. Thank you.
I have said a while ago that comparative studies always help you in making a comparison and then becoming more and more strong Muslim and being able to communicate dawah in a better way, because now you know what are the other dimensions and other sides of story. Therefore, I do not see any problem in that. However, when you said modern researches are made in an objective manner, I disagree with that. I'm not aware of any single writing on comparative religion or history of religion which is not carrying very clear biases. I quoted titles of books a while ago by anthropologists, religionists who have written books on the black soul and African religions and African mind and whatnot. And all that indicates racism, all that indicates their understanding of human beings ethnically and racially. Similarly, in the treatment of religion, there is plenty of bias, which is very much reflected. You can only know that if you have lived in that situation. I have lived in North America. I have lived in various parts of the world. I understand the mind of the writers. I know when they write something, what do they mean by it? So it's not just a matter of my own personal view. I think many of the Western writers themselves are now talking about that subjectivity, that Eurocentrism, which exists in the minds of every single Western writer about others.
Thank you very much. We have almost reached our end time. So, Professor Dr. Ahmad Saab, thank you very much for accepting this invitation and delivering this wonderful lecture. Your guidance and your support will always be there, inshallah. We are looking forward for that. So, the participants, we will have our next session, inshallah, on November 5th. It will be on significance of religion. So the main theme is one, but every lecture will be entirely different. So we request all of you to be punctual and attend all the program. We end our program with dua. And I would like to request my colleague, Dr. Zahiruddin Bahram, please conclude the program with dua.
لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين وعلى كل من دعا بدعوته واستمسك بسنته وجاهد جهاده إلى يوم الدين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وأدخلنا الجنة مع الأبرار يا عزيز يا غفار. اللهم ربنا أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. اللهم أعز الإسلام والمسلمين، اللهم انصر الإسلام والمسلمين، اللهم انصر من نصر دينك ودين نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم واجعلنا منهم، واخذل من خذل دينك ودين نبيك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ولا تجعلنا منهم. ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك. وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. آمين يا رب العالمين.